And we're off.
Okay. So Mark was talking. Welcome to the Cancer Conquering community for Monday, July 22nd. And tonight's a special night
2024.
that myself, Boyd Dunleavy, I'm going to tag team with my friend Jon Brent. And we're going to treat it as if Jon came up with this stupid idea of starting a podcast a few months ago. And so I'm going to pretend this is our first podcast interview. So welcome, Jon.
Thanks so much for having me. I nailed
Yes,
it. I nailed that one.
you nailed it. So, if you could tell us what your life was like before cancer.
Yeah. Luckily for me, and I say luckily, I didn't really have too much life before cancer. I was diagnosed in just before my third birthday, around Christmas, when I was 2 years old. I think I was walking at 10 weeks, running at 11, or 10 months, I mean, running at 11, and caused as much chaos as I could on a tricycle. But they had me on a gurney pretty quick.
What were um, what were the symptoms like? What was the trigger point for your folks to realize, hey, there's something wrong here?
Yeah. So I've always been pretty extroverted, even as a little toddler. And all of a sudden, around that Christmas in '95, uh, or sorry, Christmas '94, my folks started noticing I wasn't coming out of my room. I wasn't playing with my cousins. I didn't want to eat any ice cream. You know what I mean? It was just way too much lethargy for how much energy I used to have. So they brought me in for some blood tests.
And what was the emotion when they discovered it was a form of blood cancer? That's the first diagnosis.
Yep, the original diagnosis was acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Um, I think I was only 3. They were, of course, devastated, but my folks raised me the way they behave themselves. They do not complain. Uh, so they were very they right away kind of went into attack mode. They instantly started figuring out plans. Where's the best place for this type of treatment for this? Who's leading in the world on acute lymphoblastic leukemia research, diagnosis, treatment protocols? Uh, and dad just went into, how much money am I going to need to make if Canada doesn't cover this? He just went right to work.
Yeah, Canada. So, right away, you and welcome, Russ. Thank you for joining us. If you wouldn't mind muting as we're talking, but we would love to hear from you at the end. So right away, the cancer treatment started, chemo, radiation, things like that.
Yes, sir. I can kind of run through the whole thing. So when I was 3, I was diagnosed with leukemia, and back then it was experimental chemotherapy protocols. So I had 3 years of chemotherapy. Um, on week 154, I relapsed and needed a bone
Jeez.
marrow transplant,
Mhm.
which I received on my dad's birthday, his 40th birthday, November 13th, 1998. Um, but it was
And it
it,
was an unrelated transplant from an unrelated
It
donor.
it was. My parents, if you think of bone marrow markers, and you know this, but maybe not everybody knows this, it's kind of like blood, where there's A, B, and O, positive and negative. But for bone marrow, the markers there's 12 of them: A, B, C, D, E, F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Kind of an easy way to explain it. My mom, 3 out of 6 match. A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. My dad, 3 out of 6. D, E, F, 4, 5, 6. Brother, complete opposite. 0% match. But the donor we found was unrelated in Waterloo, Ontario. She lived on John Street, if you'll believe it.
Did you guys use like onematch.ca or a registry like that, or how was the connection made?
So a lot of that didn't exist yet. I have done a lot of advocacy of that for myself with the Canadian Blood Services and One Match and different bone marrow registries in the decades since. But we went to our churches, we went to the newspapers, we went to the radio. We asked as many people to sign up and get swabbed and get a little DNA on some cotton Q-tips as we possibly could. And it was all
Amazing.
through, like, same way you'd advertise a garage sale.
That's amazing. And my son has cancer. We need a stem cell transplant.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So For those that haven't been through, I've been through an unrelated transplant as an adult, and it was one of the most painful things I've ever been through. Do you recall any of that, or
Oh yeah. There were a lot of dark days in isolation rooms. I had shingles on treatment, one of the worst cases in our country. But I'm in a textbook, so that's all right. I remember a lot of hopelessness, and I remember a lot of I'm only one of 2 out of 10 that survived. So there were most people and most families around me. It was very somber.
you're one of Canada's longest living stem cell transplant recipients?
It'll be 26 years this November.
So you and
30.
one other person in Canada.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you, man.
Um, so not to make light of that, you survived. You made it. You've been through a lot of dark days, but I want to ask you a couple things. One, and we'll come to questions in a minute, buddy. What are a few highlights you can think of? For example, I'm just going to put words in your mouth, and if you got something better, that's great. But like your friends taking you on that trip to wherever you went to Cuba to play in a band. Like what are one or two things you can think of that just make you smile?
Okay, that's a really good question. Just one or two things, and I'm just gonna go from this year because I think I'm lucky that I took all my licks up front. I got a big measuring stick right away, so I get to have and practice gratitude for a lot longer than many people my age. I'm 32. So just this year, I got to go, like you said, it wasn't Cuba, it was Jamaica. Uh,
Jamaica. So
I'm going blind as a result of some of my cancer and treatments and rare genetic conditions. The friends that took me there to play in a band and have a little fun also made sure that I didn't go home without an e-bike, so that if I can't get around in my in my Jeep, I can get around on a little. It's actually pretty cool. So I'll show it to you if I can turn this blur off.
and you're the backup drummer. Is that correct?
Oh, I can play Three Little Birds no matter how many pina coladas you put in me, buddy.
What instrument were you playing?
You
There it
see that
is.
thing? It's like a little
Yes, we
cafe
can.
racer.
There we can. Yes, we can.
Uh,
What
I
instrument do
play
you
the
play?
drums. What was I playing? I was playing the triangle and the table behind the band. Jeff didn't need a backup this time.
Kind of, kind of like Will Ferrell in a '70s
It
skit.
was it was kind of like Blue Mountain State. I was the backup quarterback. I didn't need to play.
Backup quarterback. All right. One other highlight for you.
One other highlight.
Can be like as a 10-year-old. What about meeting your donor? We didn't talk about that.
Oh my gosh! So I got to meet my donor in Oakville, and we had all my family around. We invited all my aunts and uncles, all my cousins. We had it at my grandma's brother's house, maybe like 80 people. They had no idea what they were walking into. But we just showered these people with love. Melissa McTrack is her name. She's a teacher still in Waterloo, Ontario. And I have a lot of heroes in life, but it starts with her giving me a second chance.
Yeah. All right.
Are we about to flip the script, or do you have a few more questions?
I want to ask two more things. So I don't want to ask about a sad day. You kind of touched on that. Let's remember a friend that you've lost or a few. Who can
I
you
know
think back to that, hey, I'm doing this for this person?
two come to mind immediately. Um, Harder to talk about. I had one friend that I lost. We grew up, you know, playing Pokemon cards and stuff like that together in the hospital. His name was Chris Roy Bailey. He made he made watercolors exceptionally. Like the kid was 6 or 7, and he painted like he had 50 years experience. So whenever I get to see a sunset or a sunrise with some of those beautiful colors in them, the purples and the oranges, and right at dawn or right at sunset, I always think of Chris Roy Bailey. And the other one would be my friend Andre. He passed. He was in Ajax, kind of Whitby area of the GTA, and he had everything that I had, but one step worse. If I had graft versus host disease, gut, liver, skin, lungs, he also had the heart. If I had
Hmm.
20% of my lungs removed and 13 lung collapses, he had a double lung transplant. If I
Gee.
had one bone marrow transplant, he had two, uh, and he didn't make it past the second one.
So when did you lose both of those friends? How long has it
Chris
been?
would have been 1999. Andre was 2014.
All right.
Yeah.
So what do you hope for?
Oh, I hope for so many things, but I think,
Can you think of like two things or maybe
yeah,
touch on what we're doing in September or like I don't want to ruin it or put words in your mouth, but like
not at all. So I'm just trying to think of some personal goals and aspirations, or hope for this cancer conquering community. I hope for the camaraderie and the connection in these types of support groups, because they're very new to me this year. It just keeps growing and growing and bleeding into each other, because I think I haven't found communities like this, or I hadn't been exposed to communities, supportive communities like this, kind of before 2024. And I just hope the momentum keeps building and building.
so just for context, John crashed our Man Up to Cancer support
Oh
group
yeah.
meeting in about February. And um, even though he's 16 or 17 years younger than me, it just he feels like a brother to me. And when we talk, it's side splitting laughter and stupid humor and jokes and all kinds of beyond shenanigans. And so um, didn't realize I needed you until I found you, buddy. So my life's a better place having you here. Thank you for sharing. I'm gonna open it
Thank you,
up.
brother.
Love you. I'm gonna open it up. We'll use the hands if people want to ask John any questions. We'll give that about 5 minutes.
Okay,
And
sounds
again,
good.
we're just kind of flying by the skin of our teeth or pants tonight. But go ahead, buddy, and ask away.
John, how long after your transplant did you meet your donor?
It took about 5 years. The first 2 years, you're not even allowed to contact them.
Right. Okay. It's interesting because I have a friend who received a liver transplant
Okay.
who actually met his donor before they had the transplant.
Are we
Oh
talking
my
about Tim
gosh.
McDonald or somebody else?
We are.
So Mark knows Tim McDonald, and I
Yeah.
believe Zach
Mhm.
does also.
Yeah. Mhm.
So this guy like is close with him, by the way, Mark Kagiyama.
Yeah.
Might be a possible interview. Anyways, let's keep going. But yes, Tim was for
He met
his
his donor
liver.
prior to having the donation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
it might be very donor and patient specific, right? In terms of what they feel like they can even handle emotionally if they
Well,
want.
no, it's the I think it's the type of diagnosis, right? Like I had to wait a year. I mean, most stem cell transplant recipients die. And I don't
Well,
want
but
to
his was a liver
a
donation.
liver donation, right?
His
So
was a
living
liver
living
donation.
donor
Right.
and a donation. So,
Right.
but yes, good question. Did you want to comment anything else, or would anybody else like to
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
go ahead, Mark?
Looking forward to seeing you in September,
Oh yeah,
John.
yeah. You guys are
I
gonna meet
can't wait to
too.
meet you, buddy.
Yeah.
You can call him Buddy too. Okay, go
I'm
ahead. Go
I'm
ahead,
coming in
Mark.
for a hug though. I'm not a handshake guy.
All
It's a
right. That'll work.
hug. All
That'll
right.
work.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I haven't known John that long. I have done an interview with him, but the thing that really impresses me about you, John, is just your spirit and your heart. I mean, that smile that he has on his face, I mean, I see it all the time. I mean, he's just a wonderful, wonderful person. He's one of our moderators, by the way, and does a lot of work. He's the one who sends out the emails, and I really, really appreciate you. But I'm just honored to know you, John. I mean, your spirit is just so incredible, and so yeah, I'm just really, really happy to have had the pleasure to interview you and hear your story. And every time you talk, I get a little bit more and a little bit more pieces of knowledge. I do have a question for you.
Okay. Somebody's cutting onions over here. Hang on. Thank you, brother.
Just put the onions away, Jessica,
Yeah.
for crying out loud.
Uh, So you've been dealing with cancer for a very long time.
Yep.
And so, as you're growing up, you're losing friends. How were you able to start coping with the fact that you're losing your friends, some of your friends at such an early age? That I can't even comprehend that one.
Yeah. I really appreciate the your compliment, and it's funny. I'm on the board of directors of my local ultimate frisbee league, which is just like it's kind of like football but no contact. It's only quarterbacks and wide receivers. But I'm only on there as the spirit captain, the spirit ninja, the spirit Jedi. I'm just there to I'm the hype man. So I think that tying that into your question. Um, my folks really did raise me not to complain. They were pretty strict about it, if we're going to be honest. Uh, and I think that that did me a very wonderful service insofar as not only do I not only did it make me a more action oriented person, but it kind of made me see the world through what kind of responsibility can I take on to make this a little bit better, right? Because you said that I've been dealing with cancer for a long time, and that's true, me personally. But whether you're 1 year out, 5 years out, 30 years out, everybody's been dealing with cancer their whole life because it could have been your great grandfather or your second uncle Dennis, or, this world has had cancer in it for so long. And I kind of just had a macro view. After all of that happened to me, and it happened to me so early in life, it just zoomed me out. Now, it made it real weird going to grade 5. I didn't get along with anyone my age pretty much the whole time. That's all why all my friends are geezers like Boyd.
He's an old soul. No, you got a perspective. So grade 5, you were what, 8 or 10 years, 9 years old?
Yeah, 9 or 10, something like that.
Right. You're like, I don't need this crap. I don't need this
Oh
drama.
yeah, I finished all the homework. I handed it in for the year in like the third week.
I could just,
You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm reading books. What do I need to be in here for? Why the kids are all like their speech wasn't even formed, and I'm like, I had to articulate to an anesthetist.
right,
There's nothing. I'm winning every spelling bee. I'm
right.
doing every speech competition, and I just kind of got the sense, Mark, that I had a ability, so I had a responsibility, if that makes sense.
With great power comes great responsibility. And speaking of superheroes, Mr. Demopoulos would like to ask a question.
Yeah, I'm still here. Hey, John.
Hey, how's it
Thank you
going,
for
man?
thanks for sharing your story, man. And you're totally right. But Boyd's a total geezer.
Yo, yeah,
Um,
it's old as hell.
it's also, Boyd, if you go to the Poconos, and you don't come see me, I'm gonna be ticked off. I'm only 35, 45 minutes from the Poconos.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah. So, John.
Now that I know that, we have to talk.
Yeah. So, John. Your story is amazing, brother. It really is. You've experienced it yourself, and then you've experienced close friends around you. Um, it's probably a selfish question, but it certainly could really be very helpful in this respect. Give back a little bit. But what advice would you give somebody? You know, I tend to find that people don't say anything because they don't know what to say. Right? When somebody shares their story, like you just did, people just don't know what to say, so they don't say anything, or they're like, put a heart up like I did, or whatever. But
Yeah.
what are some things that, man, that you would appreciate somebody either saying or asking? And if it's nothing, that's okay. But what would you appreciate, or what have you appreciated in the past? I know that Boyd already asked a couple questions about some things that have been good to you, but words are really important, and I'm just curious. I just thought I wanted to ask you that. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, man. What a cool question. And I don't know that I have like a succinct, like perfect answer right off the top of my head. But so I'll back into it. I'll go backwards first. What I don't love is that the effect that my cancer diagnosis and lung collapses and brain tumor and dental reconstruction and all the other stuff has had is when people find out, they kind of like you, they're startled, or they're in awe, or they don't know what to say, or there's nothing to say, and then they feel and often say out loud, "Oh, I can't even believe I complained about, or I wish I didn't complain, or I can't complain about." I hate that. I can't stand that because I had no choice. There wasn't an option.
So you're saying it's hard because people can't relate to you.
Yeah, and it's frustrating that that I have, through no fault of my own, intimidated them or made them feel in such a way that they don't have the right to speak about the issues that are bothering them because they are somehow less significant. Now, or if we're all being honest here, and we're all being honest here, some people have less significant issues. You know what I mean? So, and they complain a lot, loud, often, but that's okay too. So to kind of say to answer the friend of your question, Zach, I would say I think I would just appreciate honesty. If someone's jaw hits the floor, okay. If someone goes, I don't know how to respond to that, that would be better. But I also try to understand that I had to be like ruthlessly articulate. I had to be, is this a stabbing pain in your neck or a grinding pain in your spine? So not everybody has that kind of language and that kind of vocabulary or that sort of way to express, but maybe their superpower is in how they draw or how they paint or how they, might not be communication, but it could be something else. Everyone's got some sort of superpower, Asa, my
Asa,
man.
Go ahead. Just find the mute. There you go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Kind of touching on the people put you on a pedestal, they automatically assume you're hired just for something you didn't have a choice on. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with the concept of inspiration porn, but it's where typical people, happens a lot to disabled people, is, oh my God, you have a disability, you have a chronic illness, you're a saint for living. Like, no, I'm doing day-to-day things. I'm going grocery shopping, I have a job. Yeah. I went for a walk and they're like, oh my God, you're amazing. And that really takes me off. I didn't have a choice in this. It is what it is. And it comes with good and bad, but I'm not superhuman for having autism or for having cancer. Stop acting like it's some big deal that I can do day-to-day things.
Yeah.
So if you want to look up, there's an activist, her name is Stella Young, and she does a whole thing on a TED Talk about inspiration porn that is actually really informative, but also really funny.
A TED Talk, and can you tell me the lady's name again, please?
Stella Young.
Stella Young, got it.
All right. Put it in the chat.
Thank you. That's hilarious. Yeah, I totally empathize with that, man. It's like every time you buy eggs, you're like, oh my God, you bought eggs. Are you gonna cook those yourself? And you go, oh yeah, I was planning on it, but I'm lying. I was gonna ask Jessica.
All right. Well, excellent so far. I like the thank you for sharing. If anybody else does not have any questions, we're going to flip the switch. So John, I'm going to kick it over to you, and here we go.
All right, this is perfect. So Boyd, now it's my turn to wear the pants finally, and we get to talk about living life, or the importance of living life in spite of having cancer. And I'm gonna flip some of these same questions right back on you, man. So can you tell me a little bit about your life before you were diagnosed with cancer? Your routines, career and personal goals, relationships.
I was 36 years old. We had 3 kids in 6 years. We were living in London, Ontario at the time, which is not too far from Toronto, close to where John and Jessica live. And I just thought I was tired. I was just run down constantly, was getting nosebleeds. I think the funniest thing that happened was I went to see an acupuncturist, and I started bleeding, which is really bizarre and weird because you don't bleed from the needles from an acupuncture because it's 1/100th the thickness of a normal needle. And he's like, there's something wrong. And we were supposed to go on a road trip to Chicago, and I wasn't feeling well. And my wife's like, you should go see a doctor. And I went to a walk-in clinic on a Monday or Tuesday night, not really thinking much about it. And the guy thought I had the flu. And so he ordered blood work and went to the lab the next day. And within a few hours, my family doctor called, and she had the news that I needed to get to the hospital right away. And the other thing that was kind of bizarre was, everybody remember when we had Blackberries, and for whatever reason, my Blackberry wasn't linked to my phone. So I had a phone and a BlackBerry, and I lost my BlackBerry, and I was ticked off because I had lost my BlackBerry, and that was like $500 to replace. But you know, never mind the fact that they were going to tell me that I had blood cancer. So that was, and our daughter at the time, Stephen was 6. He's our oldest. Nathan was 2. Abigail was like 3 or 4 months. So
Oh my gosh, that was life before.
absolute, complete chaos and insanity.
Right
So,
at the diagnosis. So then
yeah, and it was on Canada Day. It was on Canada
it was
Day,
on Canada Day.
2011. I actually felt the sickness come over me. So
Wow.
something evil tried to kill me on Canada Day. So that's why every year on Canada Day I do a run or whatever. Anyways,
Well, that's
you're the interviewer.
oh,
You're the
I hope
interviewer.
I hope we get to talk to you about your running a little bit later. All good,
Thanks.
Zach. Thank you so much for coming and joining in today, Zach.
Thanks,
So my
Zach.
next question for you there, Boyd, is during cancer, like your initial diagnosis, what your emotions like, what was the treatment regimen and side effects like for you? Because you had a slightly different form of blood cancer than I did, right?
Yeah, it was acute myeloid leukemia. So acute myeloid leukemia is an aggressive form of blood cancer that literally sounds what it sounds like. It's a sudden onset of cancer, and basically, if it had been delayed or if we had gone out of town, I would have died within a week or two. And so the regimen of chemotherapy started pretty much right away. And I just I was just defiant and angry, to be honest with you. I was like, no,
Yeah.
this is not happening. This is not happening. And I can't even remember what the whole time frame was, but we didn't share it publicly right away. People knew, but then, you know, you're in your second and your third round of cancer. And it was actually by the time they did the third round of cancer treatments, and it was weird. They're like, well, don't tell anybody, but you're in remission. And we don't tell people that you're in remission because it's blood cancer and this thing could come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
And they do a bone marrow aspiration or bone marrow biopsy where they draw marrow out of your hip to determine if you have cancer or not. And
That's nice and comfortable, eh?
I had about 6 of those. So the first one I had got infected. The nurse was totally incompetent. Her name was Jan. She was there are people in the hospital, they're dangerous. She was way past her prime. She was a ticked off union type individual. And the only reason why I mentioned union is because the only reason she was there, she was long past having any care or concern for people. And she walked into my room and she threw a cream on the bed and she didn't even check. My sister, who lived in Vancouver, so thousands of kilometers away, came in and checked on me and my wife too. And they're like, there's something wrong there. He has an infection.
Yeah.
And so between all that, infections and everything else, multiple infections, September of 2011, my hematologist came in and said, you have AML 6-9, which is the worst we've ever seen. We've never seen anything like this. And without a stem cell transplant, you won't live the year. And I said, well, I've got a guy. And he's like, who? I'm like, the Lord Jesus. He's like, well, that's ridiculous. I said, no, you're ridiculous.
Yeah.
You don't determine how long I live. He will. So that's kind of the first round.
But he wasn't the only guy. So like through your stem cell transplant like did they give you like any expectations or what the transplant process was like? Did they tell you about recovery?
Yeah. So just really quick, my cancer relapsed in February of 2012 because of the incompetence of Princess Margaret in Toronto, which is one of Canada's largest hospitals. And so my wife literally Googled and found Juravinski Cancer Center, which is in Hamilton, Ontario, and proposed to them that they start a new program. They didn't even have this program in place. Like, how ridiculous. I didn't even know that. She just told me this a few weeks ago. So she proposed that London send their patients to Hamilton instead of Toronto, which is overrun and no beds and people are dying, to Hamilton that had beds. And so the hematology team in Hamilton was unbelievable. And the preparation was, oh, you've gone from a 10% chance of living the year to a 30% chance of living to 5 years if you make it through the first 90 days of your stem cell transplant. So May 2nd of 2012, I had an unrelated stem cell transplant. And that was the worst, most painful thing I've ever been through. But the other highlight or low light for me was, it was the day before the Avengers movie came out. And it wasn't the only reason why I had to live, but I'm like, I have to live to see the Avengers movie. It was low. It was like family, God, all of that. But it was in the top 15 reasons to live is to see
Top
the Avengers. I think I've watched the
potentially.
Avengers movies about 500 times and was rewatching it just this afternoon for the 501st time. So I don't know. Well, you know, my stem cell donor is an American serviceman. But anyways, let's not digress. So go ahead with your next question.
Okay, so that's amazing, man. Anything for Chris Hemsworth. Life after including what was life after like? So when you did get to meet your stem cell donor, uh, what was that like? But I
What
also
what, what was the what was the in between and all that?
and I also kind of want to hear like just your recovery physically and emotionally, kind of adjusting to a new normal.
The new norm. So I'll answer your questions how I want to answer them. No. I went through, like you, I went through a traumatic brain injury and spinal cord trauma and some other things where they said I was going to lose my vision and have all kinds of other issues. To just, it was so overwhelming and depressing just answering people's stupid questions like I owe you an explanation. And maybe that's why I'm a bit of a hard ass today and sometimes come across as really blunt, because you're doing this for 13 years. You don't really have a lot of patience for stupidity. But anyways, all that to say, between the brain injury and spinal cord trauma and everything else, I eventually got off the anti-rejection medication, and I remember them saying, you're going to have graft versus host disease. And I remember the Spirit of God just saying to me, in Jesus' name, say you will. So I just prayed quietly, like, in Jesus' name, we'll not get graft versus host disease. And, you know, if you want to ask a question, do I have graft versus host disease? No, I don't. Never had it, never got it. And that is a rare oddity, John.
Yeah,
and I've talked to a lot of stem cell transplant recipients that their number one thing that affects them is graft versus host disease. So anyways, fast forward to spring of 2013, two really amazing things happened. One was a friend said, hey, I want to run a marathon for you with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society in Alaska. And at the same time, too, I connected with my donor. Now, I found out at the time that my stem cell donor is an American naval serviceman named Nathan Barnes, and Nathan was serving the US Navy and he was overseas in Japan. So here we are in 2013. Why did it take till 2019 to meet this guy?
Yeah.
Because he's been serving his country. And there are people on this call that have served in their military and in the American military. And when you're serving, you're not always available. And so anyways, when that first happened, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. We're going to do this. But waiting to meet him, waiting to meet him, waiting to meet him. And so a friend took me to Alaska, ran a marathon for me in June of 2013. I bought a pair of shoes, came home and started running, and it changed my life. And I have to tell you, I have gone from, and I still am an adult with disabilities, but somebody that was being fitted for a walker, actually used a walker at Disney with a disability, as well as having to learn how to walk up and down stairs, to a guy that started running, ran my first marathon at Disney in January of 2015. I was actually asked to share my story on stage before 25,000 people, which was really cool.
Could you do it?
I did it. And
Amazing.
then I was mocked for being disabled, but not disabled. Yeah. And like,
hey, I hate it.
Next level. Hey, you're running marathons, but you're disabled. Like, what are we doing? And so, what are we gonna ask though?
Well, I just want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I know you wanted to get to a couple of things, but the last few questions I had left were some of your sad days, some of your highlights, and what you're hoping for.
Okay, so I'll try to do this quickly, and let's circle back to it. So, running Disney, running the Boston Marathon as an adult with disabilities, literally beating the guy that said I would never go to Boston. Yeah. In 2017 changed my life. I beat him on the course. Like, that just changed my life. 2019, I met my donor Nathan at Disney. If you're looking for inspiration to anybody, that will include you, Dave, just Google me, Boy Dunleavy at Disney. I met him there. It's a very emotional moment. I hadn't met him. I waited 7 years. In the 7 years we were waiting to meet him, I magically took my family to Disney 7 times. And they're like, why do you keep going to Disney? I'm like, because I'm not doing cancer. Yeah. And Americans are a lot of fun to be around at Disney. Yeah. And I'll just put a pin in it right there. They're fun to be at Disney. They're fun to be with at Disney.
Crazy.
All right. But anyways,
right.
Yeah. But anyways, few of the sad stories for me, and I would, it's too bad that Zach had to leave, but I guess sad stories and highlights for me. I recall still to this day when I lost my friend, Melissa, who was an AML survivor in 2014. and she had septic blood poisoning and she passed away. And the one takeaway that I had to learn from that was that took me a really long time to get over. And when I'm dark and I'm down and I'm depressed and I'm sad, I'm not able to give to the next person. Yeah. And so walk through the grief, walk through the healing, walk through the pain, but then get on with it because you got to go. And the other highlight for me was Zach was talking about Lee Silverstein. And I met Lee last fall at the Man Up to Cancer gathering, and he said something that had a tremendous impact on my life. And instead of feeling sorry for himself, he said, these have been the best 12 years of my life. And something inside of me resonated. I'm like, you know, I'm just going to be thankful for that. My passion and my hope and my goal. And John and I have been planning and scheming with 3 or 4 other guys to meet up the day before we go to the Man Up to Cancer gathering in New York, and just spending a day together and going to the Man Up to Cancer event. And so I really have tremendously enjoyed all the different communities. Like for me, I've been doing cancer advocacy for so many years, but it was in late 2021 after we moved from Ontario to New Brunswick to just, you know, get out of Ontario. Like it almost killed me, literally. And I know you're there, so I don't want to be like, hey, Ontario, but it was just a fresh start at life. And through a series of events, like speaking at an event like this, I met Joe Bullock, and from Joe I met Tim, and from Tim I was introduced to Mark, and Mark and I have been doing this almost 2 years now, every week. And so but you know, again, I'm going to stick it back at you because we're doing this together tonight. It's been just a sheer joy for you to be in my life, and a little bit also, and an absolute joy too, getting to know Jessica a little bit. And I know you guys are friends and roommates. And again, I'll just say it again. So this is my joke. I got to say it. I was thinking about it. Can articulate. So I got this shirt in Florida that said Disney 1971. I'm like, yeah, this is the greatest Disney shirt ever. And then when we went to California last summer, I got a shirt that said Disney 1955. And my wife's like, it's the same shirt. I said, it is not the same shirt. and I kept going around the store saying to cast members, I said, I didn't realize I needed this shirt until I saw it. I didn't realize I needed this shirt until I saw it. And like, now I got 2 matching shirts. And I was like, I didn't realize I needed you guys until I got to know you, you know, like, so that's my kind of humorous whatever. But I'll stop talking and go ahead, John.
I appreciate it. I didn't know what I needed when I started joining these support communities. I just knew that something was missing. Right. I tried a lot in my life and my career. I tried a lot in some relationships. I just try a lot. I put a lot of effort in. I'm lucky to wake up every morning. So I pretty much go until my eyebrows sweat and then I pass out. But I didn't know that I needed these types of support communities just to have a place that I didn't have to have a filter. I pretty much don't have a filter anyway, but this is kind of a community where if I say something or I speak out of turn or I just sound dumb, you guys will just laugh and you're going to talk to me next Monday anyway, right?
Yes. We haven't.
Thinking.
Go ahead, buddy.
Ed,
go ahead, buddy. Go ahead.
Ed, what's going on? Oh, no, you're muted. Yeah, there.
Yeah, get on mute.
Boyd, what do you know about Disney?
What do I know about Disney?
Since 1955.
1955 is when...
Yeah, a little bit before your time.
That was the park in California was opened up.
Okay.
And 1971 was when the park in Florida was opened up.
You're right. You got it. Okay. Jeez. All right. I'm testing you. Just testing you.
Thank you.
All right.
Boyd's actually the oldest one here. He was at the ribbon cutting ceremony.
Not exactly.
I've joked with people for years that I missed the 1950s and 60s, even though I wasn't alive then.
I didn't miss them.
And then I've been trying to pigeonhole my children into saying they miss the 80s in like some nostalgic crap that they don't even care about, because they're like, Dad, we weren't even born in the 80s. But I try to bring odd, peculiar humor into it. But back to
Yeah.
back to John. I've never had so many stupid ideas thrown at me
It's nonstop. Years later, doctors would
from
tell me I
you
have attention
that you
deficit
don't even remember. We were
hyperactivity.
talking about 2 minutes before that. But in all seriousness, it's an absolute joy to have you as a friend, and I look forward to meeting you in person. And other questions, Mark? Like, do you want to just kind of whatever with the thing, or do you want to open it up, or what would you like to do? This has been great, and we've gone till 10:02, so we've done great.
Oh, we've done awesome.
Yeah, go ahead,
Thank you
Mark.
so much.
How was
Well,
that, by the way? How was that?
Fantastic. Love it. Absolutely love it. So next week we have our open gathering, and this is where I had mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. You know, come join us up, network with everyone, and that's a big theme that we encourage everyone to do, is to network and get to know people, and you'd be very surprised, when you do open yourself up and you connect with people, how amazing things can happen. Really, really, really. So next week is our open, and then on August 5th, that's next week is the 29th of July. And on August 5th, we will have Michelle Sherhart, and she's got a phenomenal story. I did an interview with her, and I mean,
Hey,
I just
I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry, you finish your thought, and then I'm going to say something because John put something in the notes. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
um, but I also want to thank everyone for joining us here, and for sharing, and for wanting to be part of this community, because what we're emphasizing here is a very, very positive community. And you notice it's not like other gatherings that I've been to where people just moan and groan and go on and on. It's not like that, because if you're gonna moan and groan, then it's you're not gonna get. We're gonna mute you real quick. I
There's
mean,
other groups for that. Hey,
yeah.
Mark, John had a suggestion, so we've got the
Go
camera
ahead.
on.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Dave, are you comfortable in muting and maybe just giving a 2-minute share, because this is being recorded, about your son's journey, and Ty, and just how we can support you in that? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but we want to, since it's being recorded, can you share about your son?
Sure. My son Tyler was diagnosed with AML in January of 2023. He went through several chemotherapy sessions, and then finally he received his second birthday on August 2nd. His first, that was his bone marrow transplant, and then we went 7 months. Now through this, he's gone through scare and brain hemorrhaging. He's been through pulmonary hemorrhaging. So, long story short, it's been a lot of scary times for him. 7 months later, he was diagnosed with AML again, and so we went through chemotherapy number one. He went back to pulmonary hemorrhaging. The second chemotherapy didn't affect him as bad, but the prognosis that we've been given is pretty somber. But we're not going to allow that. We want to try everything we can to keep this little boy around. So he's got just such a positive attitude. He doesn't even, I don't think he even knows he's got AML. But anyway, so tomorrow he will have let me back up. He's on his third chemotherapy. It's a clinical trial medication. He has 2 mutations in his leukemic cells that they're trying to attack. And tomorrow he has his first bone aspirate to determine how well the clinical trial medication is working. So tomorrow and the next 2 days are kind of big days as we learn what's going on.
We'll be sending extra love your way, brother.
Thank you. We'll be praying for you. Dave, I don't want to make light of what your son's going through, but I was trying to do a quick calculation here. Buddy is like 10, 12, 13 years into a lung cancer diagnosis. Jessica is a lifelong cancer survivor. Jon is whatever. I'm 13 years. Like the level of miracles in this room, it's got to count for something. It's got to count for something.
And the technology has come so far that what they can do for kids today is phenomenal. Where are you again? Are you in Canada?
Colorado.
Colorado. Okay.
Or
Me,
Utah?
I'm in
Yeah.
Utah.
Utah,
and,
sorry.
Okay.
and so they have, you know, I've gotten some great suggestions. I've used LinkedIn as kind of my, they've been my support network. That's where I met Mark. A lot of people gave me a lot of suggestions when I sat down with the oncologists. I had just a bunch of notes about, you know, strong places that they need to collaborate with. So we have, you know, 4 options coming up, and looks, you know, obviously we want this one to work. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and saying our prayers, and then they're going to make a decision whether or not to keep us in Salt Lake City for the next clinical trial if this one doesn't work, or we're going to go to Seattle. But we're very hopeful and very convinced that this one's going to work. So, you know, we got our fingers right. We got our prayers going, and so yeah. And I'm just amazed at this group. I really am. I come at it from obviously a different perspective. You know, with your youngest son getting AML. But nonetheless, again, this group has been very, very good for me to see the miracles all throughout it. And I'm just happy to be a part of it.
We're honored you're here, sir.
We're channeling TIE Fighter. TIE Fighter.
TIE Fighter, yeah.
Yeah. He'll be in our thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I have a little cold today, so I've been going on and off to.
Oh, here we thought you're crying. You should have just gone with that.
Yeah, it
Should have
is.
just gone with that. Jon's story was so touching.
Yeah.
Jon's story is just a.
Hey, Jon, did you say you're a drummer?
I am, yeah, since I was like 8.
So who's your favorite drummer?
Stuart Copeland.
Okay, I thought it would be Neil Peart.
No, but I mean, amazing. He's just so technical. Stuart Copeland has such weird polyrhythms and syncopations for like Sting and the Police.
Oh,
And
that's
Clark
the drummer
Kent,
for the Police.
Clark
Okay.
Kent before Sting and the Police. That was a horrible band, though.
I thought it was a slam dunk with him in Ontario that it was Neil Peart.
Nah, you should have known. I'm weirder than that.
All right, for those of us that aren't familiar with all that, Mark, did you want to share anything before you turn the camera off, or?
Yeah, let's any final thoughts for either Boyd or Jon before we close off the recording, or Dave. Okay, let's wrap it up. We're going to stay on, but the recording is going to end right